What's up, YouTube? So in this video, we're going to be finally going over my top 10 edge rushers of the 2021 NFL draft class. We've done some other position rankings so far. And yeah, we're getting started on edge rusher. I have done videos on everybody that's going to appear on this list. I think they're all out by now. If not, then they will be before the draft. So yeah. Starting at number 10, we've got Jayson Oweh out of Penn State. He is 6'5 and 252 pounds, so he's pretty much ideal for the build of an edge rusher at the next level. Now, he had no sacks in 2020, but he had 7 throughout his college career. I do see him primarily as a left defensive end to start with. He could potentially play right, just based on what he's able to do at the pro day and everything like that. Because apparently he's more athletic than he lets show on tape. But he's pretty decent with his hands. I do prefer his hand in the dirt. He might even be able to two-gap if he gains a little bit of weight. He's shown the ability to be able to defeat hands. But the thing is, like, he's supposed to be really athletic. Like, his 40 time was supposed to be really good. His cone drill, all that was supposed to be really solid. But he doesn't really show that athleticism on film too much, which is a little bit strange, which is why he's kind of lower on the list. But I do think he has a very high ceiling if he can pull it all together. He does have a tendency to jump off sides. And he actually does have a pretty fast spin move, but he does need to use it more, and he also needs to use it with a little bit more control, because sometimes he gets himself out of position. And he does have some power to him as well. Now, one thing I will say, his eye discipline can be a little bit questionable sometimes. It's just kind of tough because I just think he's a very raw prospect. Somebody really needs to be able to get a hold of him and let him be able to find a way to bring out his natural gifts, because if you can find a way to harness that, I think you will have a pretty good prospect on your hands. But yeah. Okay. So the next guy is also a guy that's high ceiling. By the way, I think Jayson Oweh is a solid player to take on day 3, and I think this next guy is a day 3 guy as well. And that is Patrick Jones out of Pitt. So he's 6'5", about 260 pounds. So again, pretty ideal height and weight for a defensive end at the next level. And I do think he's another one who is very raw, but has a pretty high ceiling. And I do see him as like a day 3 development player for the most part. He can get pushed around sometimes, but he has really, really good ball get off. He has athleticism. He can turn really, really well. He is absolutely violent coming off the line. Violent in general. He's violent with his hands. He's very twitchy. But he's really not that strong, and his technique is pretty non-existent. He doesn't really seem to rush with much of a plan. His hands really aren't that good. He looks just like a quick, twitchy edge rusher who just hasn't learned to really play edge rusher yet. So I think at the next level, I think someone could really get a hold of him and really help him. I do see him as someone who could be a 3-4 outside linebacker. He definitely has the athleticism to do it. But if you're a 4-3 team, plug him in at right defensive end. Probably let him rotate in a little bit at first, but until you teach him some better technique, he's not really going to be or at least he shouldn't be a starter in the NFL, to be honest. But I do think he is a pretty good prospect for day 3. So our next player is yet another pretty raw edge rusher talent, and that would be Joseph Osai out of Texas. Now, he has an excuse for being raw. So to start things off, he's 6'4 and 253 pounds, so again, pretty good size to him. But he was a linebacker up until this year, and I don't mean like 3-4 outside linebacker. I mean like he was a linebacker. And I don't really like him doing that. He really does need to stay at edge. Like they had him playing Sam linebacker and stuff like that, and I'm not a big fan of that. He has a really good motor. He does not stop. He has really long arms. He does have a little bit of a weird stance, but I think that just comes with him being new to the position. It looks like he's about to like try to cover the tackle. Like he lines up like he's a corner lining up against a receiver, but he'll line up in front of the tackle that way. It's really weird. But he has quickness. He has athleticism. He does look a little bit stiff. I'll say that. He doesn't really turn as well as I would like. I do think he can maybe play some snaps at Sam, but I do want to see him mostly as a edge rusher. I do see him primarily as a right defensive end, though. I'd like him preferably in the pass rushing game more so than run defending. He doesn't necessarily rush with much of a plan, but he does have some athleticism. He might be better off in like a 3-4 team as a 3-4 outside linebacker. That might be where he'd be better off. But if you are a 4-3 team, don't hesitate to draft him. I think he does have a lot of raw talent. And yet another guy I wouldn't take till like early day 3. But I think he definitely can give you some value as a rotational player right now and potentially develop into more once he works on his technique a little bit. So this next player is another guy I'd probably save until day 3, but I do think he is a different type of edge rusher, and that is DeOoda Odenigbo out of Vanderbilt. So he's 6'6" and 276 pounds, so he is a bigger edge rusher than the guys we've talked about, and he has really, really long arms that he uses pretty well. He has a good ability to squeeze close to the tackle, so that cuts off run lanes, particularly in like read option and stuff. He sets the edge very well. He's very successful in the run game. He has some power to him. And I think that he is going to be best off being a left defensive end in a 4-3 scheme. He does need to work on like his pass rushing sets. His hands could be a little bit better. He could rush with a plan a little bit more. But I think he can step in right now and be decent in the run game right away. And just kind of work on his pass rushing abilities once he gets to the league. But I wouldn't touch him until like early day 3, kind of like the guys I've been talking about. But I do like him a lot. So, yeah. Okay. So, the next person on the list is Carlos Basham out of Wake Forest. So he is 6'5" and 285 pounds, so he is definitely the biggest person we've talked about, and I think he might be the biggest person on this list in general. And he is a guy that might be able to play some 3-4 defensive end too, but I think he is best as a left defensive end in a 4-3 scheme. But I do think he definitely does have some versatility there. So he has a pretty decent spin move, and he can move a little bit considering his size. He has a really solid swim move that he uses to a good degree. He uses his hands pretty well, gets him inside. He has a pretty nice cloth pull. He has some serious power to him. He has some good hand fight if he can't get his hands inside. He's very good in the run game. He squeezes close to the tackle. He sets the edge. He has stood up a little bit and done some 3-4 outside linebacker things, but I don't like that role for him. I think he's better off with his hand in the dirt. He's not perfect, don't get me wrong. I think he's more of a run-stopping defensive end right now, and that's where I kind of prefer him as a left defensive end. But he's fantastic versus outside zone run, and I think he can definitely fill a role, and he does give you some value as a pass rusher too. But I think if you plug him in at left defensive end right now, I think he can start right now on an NFL roster. I would probably consider him probably somewhere in the 3rd round somewhere. Maybe even late 2nd, possibly, depending on how the board is going. But I really, really like Carlos Basham. Okay, moving on. This is a guy that I wish was getting more hype than he is, and I'm not sure why he's not getting the hype. Peyton Turner out of Houston. To me, like, Greg Russo is someone who has gotten a lot of hype in this class, and to me, Peyton Turner is all the good things that people say about Russo. But it's false with Russo, but it's true with Peyton. So he's 6'6" and 270 pounds, so he's a big boy as well. He has good size, good length to him. He has a really hard-ass punch. Like, he actually moves people back with his punch. Strong as hell. Really, really nasty-ass swim move. That hard punch in the chest and then swimming over the top. It's a pretty nice combo. He has a nasty-ass cloth pull that he can use. He could probably give you some value as like a 3-tech in like a third and long situation, like pass sets. Like, you bring in another edge rusher and let him play 3-tech. I think he can definitely give you some value there. He sets the edge very effectively. He has some burst for his athleticism. For his size. He's violent as hell, and he is someone who will keep going the entire game. He doesn't stop. He doesn't quit. He just keeps pushing. Honestly, these top 5 guys is where it really gets interesting. This edge rusher class is actually pretty fun, to be honest with you. I really, really like these guys. And honestly, if you want to put Peyton Turner above some of these guys, I wouldn't even be upset with you. I really, really like him. But, I'm not sure why he's not getting more hype. Hopefully the NFL scouts see what we're seeing. Also, I do see Peyton Turner as someone who could go like anywhere like late second round to early third. But next is Ronnie Perkins out of Oklahoma. He's another guy that hasn't really gotten the recognition that I feel he deserves. He's 6'3" and 247 pounds, and I really do like him. He sets the edge very effectively. He's got some pretty long arms, and he uses them to a pretty good degree. He uses arm extension to beat people. But one thing I will say is he likes to extend with that arm, but he needs to get better at extending with that arm and then defeating the outside hand. He needs to finish that. But he also does need to squeeze. And the only reason I have him over Peyton Turner is because I think he athletically is a little bit better. But honestly, if you want to swap these two, I wouldn't even be that upset. I think they're both right there with each other. I think he kind of fits right into that same spot of being like a late second round, early third round type of placement. And honestly, both of them could go higher just because edge is so important. Honestly, I can even see them going as early as like early second round. It just depends on where the board is going, because edge rusher is one of those positions. It's a premium position, so it could go sooner than that. And if a run happens, like, things can get kind of crazy with edge. So, okay. And by the way, I think that Ronnie Perkins is more of a left defensive end in a 4-3. I do want his hand in the dirt, preferably, but don't put him at like 3-4 defensive end. If a 3-4 team drafts him, definitely put him at linebacker. But next, Azeez Jabra out of Georgia. He's 6'3" and 240 pounds, and I see him more as a 3-4 outside linebacker. But if you are a 4-3 team, don't hesitate to put him at right defensive end. This is a guy I could see going like late first round, early second, something like that. He is kind of raw, but he does set the edge very well. He doesn't lack power. I wouldn't say he's super powerful, but he does have more strength than you would expect. And it will kind of surprise you on film. I wish he would have stayed another year to kind of work on his technique, but it just kind of is what it is. But he does have a lot of athleticism. He has a lot of burst. The thing is his technique, his hands. He doesn't really rush with a plan. I'd like to see him squeeze a little bit more. A lot of those things just kind of escape him, but I do think he has the athleticism and natural gifts right now where he can give you some value right away, and I think he has a super high ceiling. I really do. I think a lot of people would probably make him number 2, possibly even number 1. I think this top 5 is pretty debatable. I think if you were to mismatch any of them, I'd be okay with it for for certain reasons that we'll get into. But yeah. Okay. Next one, Kwity Paye out of Michigan. So he is 6'4" and 272 pounds. He moves all over the place. Michigan moved him all across the D line. I do prefer him as like a left defensive end personally, at least right now. He could play right defensive end though too, because he does turn pretty effectively. But we'll get there in a minute. He gets his hands inside pretty consistently. He has a pretty nice cloth pull. He sets the edge effectively. He does look a little bit weird in gap exchanges, I did notice. Looks a little uncomfortable with it sometimes. But he's pretty consistent in the run game. Really good versus read option. He squeezes close to the tackle to cut off run lanes. He's got really good burst for his size. Good effort. He doesn't stop moving. He's shown the ability to consistently be able to defeat hands. I will say he doesn't have like a huge arsenal of moves, but he has. He's good at defeating hands, and that's really all you really need. And he has shown the ability that he can stand up, but I do definitely prefer his hand in the dirt. He can change direction really, really, really well, and his cone drill was pretty nuts as well. And he also seems like just a very intelligent player as well. Now, I do think at the next level, if he could improve his arsenal, maybe add a swim move, get even better with his hands than he already is, I think he would just take that step further. But right now, he uses those hands to be able to, make big plays against the run. But I think if he were to expand his arsenal, he could be a better threat in the pass game. So I'd like to see him continue to develop that, but I think he is a very, very good player right now. All right, so moving on. The number 1 on the list is Jalen Phillips, edge rusher out of Miami. So he is 6'5" and 266 pounds. And I know a lot of people aren't going to want to put him number 1. I do think he is by far the most talented edge rusher in this class. But the big thing is he does have major health concerns. He was basically forced to retire in 2019 because of concussion problems. And he came back and transferred to Miami this year. And he is a fantastic prospect, but the injuries really are a concern. But as far as talent, he is better than everybody on this list. His ball get off is amazing. He sticks close to linemen. He squeezes. He's really good against read option. He sets the edge very effectively. He's got a nice swim move. He gets his hands up to bat passes down. He's really good at swiping hands. He's just in general really good with his hands. He's very patient against misdirection, like read options, end arounds. He's just very patient with all that stuff. His eyes are pretty good for the most part. He does sometimes work himself out of the play because he doesn't stop, but he doesn't do it too often. And he has a lot of burst to him, and I think he can be a 3-4 outside linebacker or defensive end. I think 3-4 outside linebacker might be best for him, but if you're a 4-3 team, do not hesitate to put him at right defensive end. I think he is by far the most talented edge rusher in this class. Like I said, it just really just comes down to what his health is going to look like, because if it's anywhere near where we would want it to be, then nobody in this class can even touch him. But overall, I like all 10 of these guys. And like I said, the top 5, if you want to move it around, I understand. Like, Turner is amazing. Like, if you want to put him higher than some people on this list, if you think that, Ojulari is too raw, you want to put Turner or Perkins above him, I understand. If you're too afraid of Phillips' injury history to have him number one, you want to push him down, I understand. If you're not looking for a run defensive end, so you're not a big fan of Kwity Paye, so you prefer Ojulari, I understand. But all these guys are just fantastic. But Jalen Phillips, just talent-wise, is by far the best in the class. And to me, it's really not close. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video. If you liked it, appreciate hitting that like button. Have any questions or comments, leave in the comments down below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.